I think it's sufficiently warm.
Warm up.
Oof, we took a break.
Hmm?
We didn't have episodes for a while.
Yeah. Not for any bad reason.
Yeah, last week was just tiring. So, self-care, guys, self-care.
Loading our monitors.
And I am spamming on Twitter.
YouTube is on. I see it.
Then again, I guess it was good that last week our last episode was the very long episode about getting a job. So it was a pretty meaty episode to leave as the last one.
I still have not received the notif from Facebook.
Oh, I even tagged you in the thing.
Yeah, it's probably my Facebook. Thing up
Might want to refresh the whole tab or something.
there. Now it's visible.
But it's just us.
Mm-mm.
Now, talking about the board game today.
Uh-huh. So really frustrated with these glasses. There's always that blind spot.
I get used to it.
So it's either I wear it super close, which makes me feel like I should have just gotten reading glasses, or I still use this side and I always pull back so I can see something better.
Ganun talaga.
Age.
Just accept your bespectacled fate. You at least, got a good 40 plus years without glasses of any kind.
Yeah.
I have been wearing glasses since kindergarten.
Yeah.
So, yeah, keep complaining.
But you don't need it to read.
Oh, wow. Hey, Karen.
Hey, Karen.
Thanks for dropping by. We're waiting for people to join before we start properly.
Yeah, we'll probably start in 1 minute.
Probably.
What else? So,
I'm trying to de-kimchi the house. It smells like kimchi soup. And it's the classic, you don't notice it until you step away. And then when you enter the main area again, it's like, oh, delicious.
it's rich.
Yeah. But we'll get to that. Different those pills and sheep.
Yeah, we haven't played that expansion enough.
Yeah. That's the one that's annoying where you keep drawing sheep until the wolf appears.
And then I don't recall what the shepherd is.
Points for sheep? Huh?
I forget if they're like a farmer. I know there was a farmer like mechanic.
Yeah. AJ.
My nose is suddenly acting up. Maybe I'm allergic to light. It's like, with the light on and now.
Wow.
It's a light allergy.
That's a special allergy. And it's LED.
Yes. Good evening, Jay. We still have to schedule that game night, Jay, someday. Pandemic day. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I have no idea what your schedules are like because I know RJ's sometimes work on weekends. So
Yeah. And I hate this.
Andre, sorry.
I hate this where we're thinking of having like one or two people over,
Mm-hmm.
as rare as we do consider doing that.
Yeah.
And I feel guilty that we're doing it because it's a pandemic. But then I know there are people who are meeting like 17, 30 people at pop. And I'm like, they have no shame. Anyway, before this turns into a rant episode, this is Toby.
And this is Rocky.
And if it's your first time here, welcome to Baduy Pride, our little space on the internet where we talk about anything we want.
This is completely unscripted, not entirely accurate, but at least it's honest. Join us, we talk about everything and anything random live.
And if it's not your first time here, thank you so much for joining us again. We are talking about a board game which we touched on in the episode where we talked about interesting
Components.
interesting components that we like.
So now we're actually going to talk about the game. Mitch is reacting to, oh my god, captions. What? Are we closed captioned? Do we have subtitles? Like, I would be very surprised because it's a live stream. So
I'm now nervous what the captions are translating.
is there a
to as we're
gremlin
talking.
that is typing very quickly right now?
But yes, we are talking about the board game Tzolk'in.
We're not sure how to pronounce it, but we'll go with that.
Tzolk'in is, the full name is
Tzolk'in, the Mayan Calendar.
Is a 2 to 4 player board game that plays for around an hour and a half, 2 hours. The caption is, lead your people, build monuments, and make offerings to earn the favor of the gods. And in many ways, that is what really happens in the game. It is a worker placement game wherein you and the other players take turns placing workers in a dynamic moving board. It's not a modular board.
No.
Because the board's always the same.
Yes.
But it actually moves as you play. And we'll try to demonstrate it later. But by moving the people...
Another patented Baduy Pride board game demonstration.
By moving the people onto locations, you then set them up in advance for later turns when you will get them back and activate the spot they're on.
That's the funny thing. Like, we're so used to worker placement, meaning I put the worker on the spot, I use the action now. In this case, you put the worker on the spot,
She puts the work
and
on
then
the
you
spot.
wait.
Sorry.
And then... I'm with a child. All right. So, but then
Hey, RJ.
it is only when you retrieve the worker that you are able to acquire the ability of the space.
No,
And-
RJ. This board game is not the author of Lord of the Rings. So
but
let's,
that is not an uncommon joke.
so let's try showing it. As we attempted to show before, the board game comes in parts, and that's because the many parts lock into each other to create the moving mechanism. You have the main wheel, which represents the Mayan calendar itself, which is known as the Great Wheel.
Yeah. And there are 4 spots on this wheel that are marked with stickers that are when things sort of happen. So that's that reminder
The
there.
other boards, as you can see, each have their own moving wheel portion. This one actually has 2. See? And you have the remaining parts. So, having drawn them all out, you're seeing how huge this board gets. And all of it requires the main central wheel. So, let's get that wheel down.
Are you really going to assemble the
Yeah,
board?
see, you can see it. So here, with this first piece, you could already see how the wheel can cause the smaller wheel to turn. But then, no, that's the wrong side. I think it's this one.
I don't.
10, 85. Nope,
No.
nope, nope. No, it's this one. There.
Chichen Itza.
Yeah. So, and then this one has to turn there. So by sliding it into place, you then have 3 portions. And look at that! Now, why all this dramatics? Players use small action tokens, which are oblong pillars. And,
Or circular prisms, if you prefer.
and choose a spot to place them because each of the wheels, and it's not that clear from the lighting, have actually slots where you can put them. So for example, this one could go here.
Little circular depressions.
And this one can go here. And as the game is played, the large wheel is turned one peg. And that affects where the worker is in relation to the board. If the worker is facing a slot, in these cases here, then that is the action that they can take when they are retrieved at a later turn. Alternately, players can choose to activate the lower effects at the cost of extra corn or food, which is a currency in the game.
Depending on the distance from the action spot.
If you actually are at the edge of the board, in this case, well, edge of the wheel, in the last slot,
Edge of the smaller wheels.
and then the large wheel turns, taking you out of an active space, you return to the player, but you have no action.
You were crushed.
And a large part of the game is making sure that does not happen. A large part of the game is calculating in advance, if I place my token here now, how many turns later should I remember to keep in mind that I should activate him? Because in this game, you must decide if you assign or if you activate.
Yeah, so that's the kicker. That during your turn, you can only do one type of action, which is either to put people on wheels or to take people off of wheels. And it results in this weird math where if I put the person now and then let him stay on the wheel for 2 turns, then hopefully I can retrieve him next turn. But then I still need to do something in the turn in between. So I guess I'll only put 1 worker now, put a second worker later, and things like that. So there's a lot of complex math in your head in like figuring out when will you put workers down and when will you bring them back. You cannot mix the two.
The game has a number of different types of tokens. Here, we tried to keep them against a black background so they're a bit more visible.
They're just not super exciting. I mean, like, they're not, like, distinct shapes.
They're older school.
Yeah, you got a lot of circular prisms, you got cubes, and you got cubes.
The round discs are used to keep track of your score. The smaller pegs, because there's these smaller pegs, they're pretty much used to track certain positions in the game, whether it's the favor of the gods or whether you have accomplished certain technologies. And then the game pretty much has 4 resources, 3 of them being cubes, corn. No, that's food. Yellow is...
Isn't that gold?
Gold, yeah. Gold, wood, and stone.
There is also food, but that's represented by a food token.
Food tokens are round tokens, which count as the currency in the game. And the tricky part about food is that you need food to do a lot of the actions.
But you also need food to feed your people.
Because at certain points in the game, and that's 4 times in total,
where the stickers are,
if you do not have enough food to feed your people, you will suffer major point penalties at the end of the game.
The gods be angry.
Everyone has a small guide card which shows the cost of food if you choose to assign more than 1 worker at a time.
That's the painful
So you might notice that the board is ripe for 2 spots where you could put your workers. But if you'll notice here, the circle, if you send only 1 worker,
it's 0.
Then you pay no additional corn. If you send a second additional worker, then that's an extra 1 corn you must pay. So if you want to be able to play all 6 workers in 1 move, then that's a lot of corn you have to be able to pay.
It's 15 corn.
And trust me, it's not easy to get corn in the game. The game also has other interesting tokens, such as the wood and corn tokens. Explaining this is a little bit harder, but basically there are spots where one can collect wood or one can collect corn, but these spots need time to grow, to be cut down.
Well, to be harvested, because typically the corn is under the wood, which represents that first you have to clear the forest, and then you can plant your corn, then you can retrieve the corn.
If you are,
the token, the wooden, the cardboard tokens themselves are not edible. I mean, like, they have specific functions in the game,
but mechanically they represent that food and wood does run out. So as you cut down the forest, you can't use that specific slot anymore for further wood if it has run out, which forces you to look at different areas. There are small starting tiles like these, which allow you to give a sense of randomness at the start of the game. Do you start the game with 2 extra food and 2 wood and an extra worker? Or do you actually start the game with 3 food, 1 wood,
Cool. And
and
technology.
a certain technology already present? It doesn't seem like much, but by having these changing starting setups at every game, it really changes how a game can feel. It gives you an idea of what technologies or what
It sort of
strategies you might
kickstarts
want
a
to do.
strategy for you, which is helpful in games like this, where there are so many paths to victory, and you never really know where to begin. Your starting technology is a good jumping off point. Like, okay, since I've been given a leg up, like with this particular technology or this particular wheel, then maybe my first few moves are going to involve that.
There are also buildings. We have buildings such as these and buildings such as these. They are differentiated by their level. There's the level 1 and the level 2 buildings.
On the back.
By building them, which has costs in the top, you immediately get the benefits at the bottom. And it might not seem like much, but a lot of them, despite being one-time rewards during the game, still give you a huge leg up. Because buildings tend to give you benefits that are either technology-based, that either give you discounts to food for the rest of the game.
Or favor of the gods.
And favor of the gods is one of the trickier parts in the game. Would you like to talk about favor of the gods?
Are you going to pull out the part of the board that shows the gods?
I'll try to because it's different pieces.
Yeah, so basically, one of the things you can do in the game is to pay homage to the gods. And there are different spaces that may trigger this. But once you have done so, you will track your progress on the different god tracks. Yeah. And the tricky thing about the gods is some of them you'll notice there are resource icons on some of the slots. And if you get that far and you come to a particular round, you will get the resources that you've reached. There are also point markers there, but you don't score them real time. You only score them on the scoring round based on when you're there. And of course, because there is a progression, getting to the top or being the furthest along in a god track or whatever you want to call it can give you points. And there are particular scoring rules on top, depending, where sometimes it's actually better not to be first, but it's a little confusing that way. There and then the gods sort of imply different rewards. So the first one gives more stone, the next one gives gold, the next one gives wood, and a chance at a crystal skull.
So what are crystal skulls? Crystal skulls are the other resource in the game which we haven't mentioned yet because we like to save it for last.
Because they're pretty.
They're super pretty little crystal skulls.
That's a profile. That's a front on. It's hard to see.
It's hard to see.
But unlike the Indiana Jones movie of a similar name, these crystal skulls are super important. It's on. Okay, I don't know.
That still doesn't help.
Yeah, because that actually needs a lighter background to be more visible. All right.
But yeah, you get a small collection of crystal skulls. They're typically earned in like the furthest portions of the wheel, which make planning to get them an investment of time.
Yeah, because you're gonna have a dude camping out on the wheel for a while, like, "Yay, let's go ride!" Hey, Karen.
But the crystal skulls then allow you
need the blue wheel
there to place workers in the best part of the game, which is
why is it the best part of the game?
Best part points-wise of the game.
Okay,
which is the
Chichen Itza.
Yes. As you can see here, each of them grant you points as well as favors with the different gods. But unlike other spaces in the game,
yeah, you don't pay resources, you pay skulls.
And once
you'll notice a little oblong there allows you to put the skull in that spot.
And once that spot is occupied,
you can't put a second skull.
No one else can place there anymore.
Yep. So it adds to the timing factor of things where you're not just waiting for an action that might be favorable, but making sure that you don't end up on a turn where you wanted to remove, but either you don't have the skull or you ended up on a slot that has a skull, so your skull is useless. You'll have to wait another turn to place it or pay food to place it at a previous tile.
Mhm. And that's
Tricky.
where technologies kick in to help you. So here in the lower part of the board, we see a different number of charts which represent technology traps you can build. The top one concerns food gathering.
Food,
The later parts are different resource gathering,
resources,
building related.
building,
And the last one allows you to get skulls.
different stuff. God's skulls.
By developing the technologies, you effectively sort of have either alternate or additional free moves
Mm-hmm.
by simply doing certain things. In the food area, for example, by getting corn, you end up getting extra corn. In later motions, you might be able to get points directly by doing a certain action. And technologies are not something you should ignore in this game. Finally, we have the monuments.
Monuments,
Monuments are like buildings. But while buildings give you benefits,
but bigger, much bigger.
monuments tend to cost a lot more resources to build.
They tend to be gold.
And the reason for that is they give you
Pum pa pum.
end game benefits.
Yay.
While most tiles give you on the in-game or quick bonus event benefits, by having a monument, you will find yourself earning much more points that others did not expect. For example, for
Every crystal skull placed, 3 points.
so if you've already placed 5 skulls earlier, that's an additional 15 points.
And it's not just your skulls; it's anyone's skulls because you can't show ownership of a skull.
Another example, the number of workers you have in the entire game gives you points. And realize, again, these are points that apply to you alone. The other players do not have a chance to get them because there's only one of each monument.
Mm-hmm.
Even things that were overlooked, like earlier, the wood tiles now give you 4
Suddenly
points
they have points.
by being the person who ate up the forest. Or by building specific types of buildings or specific types of technologies.
You can get points for your
you can
buildings.
get points as well. So these monuments are visible at the very start of the game and are things you must try to plan for during the game because for certain other players will probably grab the one you were looking at.
Yes.
And as always, you can still choose to grab monuments you might not necessarily benefit from because that means denying others points.
Mitch is asking about the expansion. We're getting there. First, I gotta warn you, as this is published by CGE, Czech Games Edition, they have weird tie-ups with other members of the CGE family. So we have found some promo tiles that were included in other games. I think it was Galaxy Trucker Anniversary Edition and things like that. So by now, if you have a decent-sized board game collection, you must have encountered similar strategies by publishers to force you to buy other games. So Tzolk'in is one of those games. The bonuses have been additional buildings and additional starting technology.
Yes.
That kind of shake things up, but they're not essential. You know, don't kill yourself hunting down the promo tiles.
Ooh, that was nice. Then you have the expansion.
Tribes and Prophecies.
Tribes and Prophecies attempts to give you a bit more variety whenever you play the game. And they do this by introducing the concept of leaders.
Yeah, so basically they give you unique faction abilities that will change the way you play. Whereas before, we were all sort of on equal footing as different Mayan lords. Now, you have specific leaders with different powers.
You have multiple leaders to choose from in the game. Let's get them all out. So yeah, that's a lot of leaders. And that's not just it. We, of course, have new buildings, whether they're the base level buildings or second level buildings.
Just to take advantage of some of the additional like mechanics introduced.
We have additions for a new player.
And extra resources because additional player.
And we have a host of other little bonuses, including the prophecies.
Bum, bum, bum.
Okay, this will be a bit harder to present. There.
Prophecy tiles, when revealed, basically give you a bonus for that like quarter of the wheel.
Yeah. So prophecies show you certain mechanics which will be in effect later in the game. You can take part in these prophecies in order to score points, and you can choose not to. However, those who do not prepare themselves for the given prophecy effects might find themselves losing more points.
In other words, if you ignore it, you will get a penalty.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't entirely ignore it if you're worried about your points.
So this nicely gives the thematic feel of the Mayan calendar, which many keep talking about as some sort of prophetic device, now a game-related feeling.
Okay, you slot your prophecy tiles here, and then you'll notice on this side, these symbols correspond to the stickers on the board, on the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll know whether it's the brown face or the blue face. Then that prophecy will come into effect.
Lastly, you have all these little additional tile effects, which again are related to the buildings 1 and 2, and it's hidden in the back, but you still have the additional chipboard for new tokens and the like. But all in all, new leaders, new prophecies, 13 of each, because 13 is an interesting number when you talk about superstitious prophecies.
It is tricky, but not terribly tricky. I mean, like, Tzolk'in on its own is already a challenging enough game. And I'll admit, when you're first getting into it, it is hard to wrap your brain around the wheel.
Yes.
And this whole, I put a person, I remove a person, but never both.
There's always that initial player reaction of, I put my person here. Hindi ko pa pwedeng gawin? No, because then the wheel must move, and now you trigger the effect, and you realize, wait, but I wanted the earlier slot. So that means you should have played the person earlier.
Oh, and then we didn't quite talk about, you can also choose to put your person further down the wheel, which again costs more food at the onset.
So since we weren't able to set up the game, this is what a board looks like when it's fully set up.
So it's 5 sets of actions depending on the wheel that you join, which represent different Mayan cities.
It's the buildings on the lower side, the technologies, and the god temple. They're visible in the corner. Each player has their collection of tokens and guide cards and the like. But it's all just a wonderful board. We've seen many others who have their own copy of the board, and they've painted the wheels.
Because the wheel, as we mentioned in the previous video, is intricately detailed. They have gone through the time of making a very complex mold of a very Mayan-inspired design, but it's monochromatic. See, look at that. You can see the embossed like design thing. But since it's monochromatic, you can't appreciate it as much. So there are a lot of people who have tried to paint it like with rich, vivid, classic Mayan colors to make it more authentic. There is no official color guide, so have fun with it. And then strategies, though. Mitch is asking for tips.
Plan ahead. It's always important to bear in mind that you can only place your token at the closest emptied spot. So even if there are 5 slots available and you wanted that 5th slot, if the first slot is the only available one that hasn't been filled up yet, you'll be forced to place there, which means it'll take you that many rounds before you can activate the person. Keep in mind that all players have the ability to turn the wheel 2 notches rather than just one once in the game. In theory, that could mean the whole wheel moving more than just 2 steps if a number of players choose to do it one after the other.
Amos, like, yes, it does look good without color. True, but only from certain angles. More often than not, as you play the game, you will not notice a detail, especially since, as instructed by the manual, you are supposed to leave the food tokens on the middle of the wheel, which is like even demonstrated on the back of the box.
Yeah.
So more often than not, the core part of the design is covered by food tokens. Brilliant.
What else? What other tips? Mind your food, because there's very few areas where you can get food. Know that you can always convert resources you have to other resources. It's not the best way to do it, but it's at least an option if you're really pressed to get specific resources. What else?
Note that every turn, a food token is placed on a gear of the wheel, which is sort of banked until someone takes the action to take first player.
Yes.
And suddenly it's a good in a rain of food. Once there are 3 to 4 tokens, expect Toby to move and take that food. So decide, will you let Toby have the food or will you get it first?
What else? What else? The game does not have direct player interaction. So there aren't any moves wherein I do this, everyone throw away like this.
Yeah.
But,
the closest is that double wheel movement.
So,
you can push a person off.
So bear in mind that placement always affects the others. Even if you're not sure what move to take, but you don't want to activate your people, send someone to gather food. That might mean sending them even if you're not gathering it next turn, or it might mean just sending them so this turn you don't get your people back. And let them travel the length of that wheel, because that wheel, thankfully, no matter how far you get, will be useful.
Okay. Always remember that towards the end of each wheel is an action spot that lets you use any of the previous action spots on the wheel. So sometimes if you've gone too far and maybe you got pushed by a double move by a player, it might be cheaper to ride it out to the end rather than paying the food cost to go backwards. And then the most basic thing is that be careful about sending all your workers out.
Yes.
Because once all your workers are out, you have no choice. On the next turn, you will retrieve workers. And if you are not ready to retrieve workers, whether because of cost concerns or you're missing resources, it won't matter. You're gonna mess that up. So that's like the key thing. Because like in the beginning, especially when the wheels are pretty empty and you're only paying 1 food for an additional person on the wheel, it gets tempting to like, I'll go here, and then you're backed into a corner because now the next turn you have to retrieve at least 1 worker.
And you don't like any of them right
now. Then you might get like, oh, you went fishing, the stupid fishing food
Actually,
spot.
the fishing is still good because you still get food. But
if you have the tech,
or you might be like, okay, I activate this, I can build the building, but I can't.
Or I can only build a crappy building. And then it's like, so be careful about that. Just remember that once you've placed your last worker, you must be ready to retrieve someone next turn. But on the flip side, remember that you don't have to place all, and you don't have to retrieve all at the same time. Sometimes just retrieving 1 is enough. And I have like sometimes I'll put 2, I'll take 1, I'll put 1, and then suddenly I'll take the first one I put. He's banked for 2-3 turns. I'll put it back. I'll put 1. So there's that dancing. They're dancing back and forth.
Oh my God. I just saw a bitch's comment. We have an inside joke with my other gaming group. 2020 is like...
Because he played Tzolk'in wrong. 1 turn per wheel each player. 1 turn per wheel each player. So they move... Oh!
Or if you activate in the wheel, the others can't. I don't know. But intriguing, because the wheels are all interconnected. Yes, the game does not have an Oprah moment. If you want Oprah moments in your game, you might want to play Machikoro.
Machikoro!
What else? Tzolk'in. If you're nice, like me, then you will remind players when a food round is coming. You will point out to other players when a certain move might be better. Because like they're like getting this and like, wait, if you wait 1 more turn, you get that endos. Or you get this na lang. But if you have come to a point wherein you feel that everyone is playing and they aren't failing to notice certain rules, then the game can get pretty cutthroat. You'll have people snatching positions before you know it. You'll have people raising the woods just to make sure that you're delayed from getting wood. Furthermore, you might even have instances wherein someone starts hoarding skulls, even if they're not going in that wheel yet, just to spite you. Because sometimes they have that building that gives you points, even if you don't have stuff in that building. What else?
The base game alone is fairly complicated, I'll admit. It's definitely one of the steeper learning curves we have among our board games. And then, I mean, it's still a lot of fun. And then when people do get it, it's beautiful. But on average, especially with new players, I feel like they don't get it until maybe the second food round. You know, once you're halfway through the wheel, and you know it's a pro and con. It's very rare that your first game is going to go beautifully, only because it's a very specific mindset. That said, I must admit that the Tribes and Prophecies expansion, while quaint, is not necessary.
Yes,
It's totally not a required expansion. It's quaint, it's helpful, but I mean the additional faction power, so to speak, with the different leaders adds new variety, but it doesn't make it that much different.
Yeah, it really just helps if you feel like you've played this game so much and things feel very familiar. If you're dying for a different taste, then that's where the Tribes and Prophecies expansion kicks in. But it's not like Caverna, wherein its expansion, the Forgotten Folk, really made the game feel fresh.
Yeah, and really the power. I guess the level of the powers was significant. I didn't feel that way the few times we played Tribes and Prophecies, and then the prophecy thing just felt like additional punishment for everyone because it's hard enough to figure out a strategy to move forward. And then to have this sword of Damocles hovering over you, saying like, if you don't have this resource by the food round, there's gonna be pain.
Yeah, it was nicely thematic, but on a game design perspective, it was like saying, "Oh, you like our game so much because you can do this, this, and this. Here's an expansion. If you don't do the stuff in the expansion, you suffer."
Yeah, so it's like
kind of shoots you in the foot.
Technically, we could probably cram the components of all of the base game and the expansion into the one box, but admittedly, we don't play the expansion a lot, and so it's helpful to keep them separate because those prophecies, man, they're scary. Karen asked if there's an app version. I haven't seen.
Sadly, no official app version yet. I've seen a few digital translations from certain sites. A number of the sites are board game sites of their own where you have to register an account. I think it wasn't Tabletopia, but I think Board Game Simulator has them.
Tabletop Simulator.
And then there was this other site which was a foreign site, but that foreign site had a lot of Euro games, which makes sense. So you might want to check those online. I am not aware of a functional solo play option either, but I would not be surprised if fans have made their own.
Yeah. I mean, but admittedly, even with just if you play with two players, you will have to put a dummy player on the board, so certain wheel spots become permanently occupied by enemy meeples. So it's there is a certain tightness that is required in Tzolk'in, that you must feel the crunch of not having places to put your people, and sometimes not necessarily having the position you want will force you to become a lot more creative and think of other ways to get what you need. And things like, I forgot the wheel, the Uxmal was the yellow wheel, I think. It has a lot of flexibility on that wheel for things like doing other wheels' actions and things like that. So you're never fully backed into a corner like I don't have an action, but in terms of maintaining a strategy, you need to be flexible.
And in many ways, that captures the name of the game. Tzolk'in translates to the division of days. And this game really makes you feel the element of time in your gameplay. Whereas in in other games you're playing, the passage of time is represented or simulated by the changing of the faces through the ages. For example, has the ending of an age when the cards run out, and then there are certain changes. Even the cards you use are now a different set, showing the new technology.
And you keep losing people.
It still generally felt like,
it's just moving forward in the game.
The game's just there until ups. It's time for the next phase. Here, every turn, there's that distinct feeling of the passage of time because things open up, things shut down.
Yeah, you kind of wish that the wheel came with a creaky sound effect of a stone wheel, because really there's an ominous shift as everybody stares at their spots, which is not difficult because you just moved to the next spot, but suddenly things will just look different, and they're like, oh no, I'm in the wrong spot.
And part of that is not just the fact that the wheel has turned, but the slots that are available have shifted. Because a player who has chosen to withdraw units in the previous turn now has those open spaces, which is amazing. Because you might be staring at it and thinking, 2 turns, I know my moves. But then on turn number 1, the slot opens up and you're like, wait, I can do that instead.
I just have to pay food and jump in forward.
But then you realize if I do that, my plan earlier for turn 2 will be messed up because then I have to do some, oh no, which one do I do? And that's what this game is awesome with.
Yeah, it's true. It's definitely challenging, but very fulfilling. And I know, I feel like we get around to playing it more, but I still feel daunted. I still get very daunted by the wheel. I will admit. It's and then I always feel like I enter the game without an idea of what my plan is, because the plan only really comes together once you have your starting tech and sort of like, okay, I have a general direction, and then 2, maybe after that first round of everybody acting on the wheel, because you may start out with the plan, but someone else may be vying for the same.
Why are you pointing at me?
You're the only person here. Who else will I point to?
You can point to the shark.
The sharks probably play nicer than you.
No.
So,
yes.
this is the same Toby who will get angry when he misses a move because he will blame the fact that he's also watching everybody and giving tips.
But that's true. I am always watching everybody. Because I don't want...
But it's also to your benefit that you are watching everybody.
No, not just that. I don't want the game to end and someone go, natalo ako kasi hindi ko nakita yung rule na yan. And I'm like, no, you lost because you lost.
So Toby's concept of fairness is so that you fully understand why you lost.
Yes, because you did the, you were following the rules. It wasn't you lost because you didn't know what you were doing. You lost because even if you knew what you were doing, you still made the wrong mistakes. If you're looking for similar games to
Toby's
Tzolk'in,
new tarot card is justice.
if you're looking for similar games to Tzolk'in, I could mention the Manhattan Projects. Only because in the Manhattan Projects, while there's no moving wheel, it is about put units, take them back.
There it has that mechanic. And the number of workers, scientists and engineers that you have, totally differentiates where you can play and what you can do.
And like Tzolk'in, until the players withdraw the workers, you're staring at that spot and you're angry. Why is someone there and I want to put there? But it has that nice effect. It's not like other worker placement games where that experience, that feeling only happens within the round. But in this round, naunahan ako. But next round, okay.
Or I got first player, next round I move first.
Tzolk'in, sometimes even if you're first player, the damn spots you want are still locked out.
Because the tokens haven't left the wheel. And then where are you gonna go?
And that is a very unique feeling that I think is worth investing on playing this game.
And if anything, do not let your guy fall off the wheel. I mean, if he makes a full circle and gets to the end, then you super wasted that guy's trip.
And keep in mind,
You paid probably to put him there.
yeah, and that was multiple turns that he's been waiting in that wheel.
Going on a ride.
What am I gonna do?
Going on
Am I
a
gonna
ride.
activate? Is this my turn? Is this it? Is it? Wait, why am I?
I
No!
I most see this potentially happen on the city where you can build buildings because you tend to aim for like, oh, monuments is later. It's
Yeah.
oh, I don't have the
Or
gold.
or nakalimutan. And then,
And then you got trapped by the, I put the
No.
person down. No, I can't retrieve. Or that freaking Chichen Itza with the skulls. Because you always want to push your luck and get to the highest
Hey,
skull.
Carlo.
And then someone does the double wheel.
Why are you pointing at
And
me
then
again?
suddenly
It's not
you're,
like
you're in a bad spot.
it's not like I can do it more than once.
But you do it at the best time.
Of course, that's playing the game. I mean, like I said, would you rather
This is
I
always
don't
Toby's
play
discussion.
to my best ability and just let you win?
How we have stayed together for 11 years, despite the frustration at times of losing to him
Hey.
repeatedly.
Okay, I get frustrated too because I'm like, I'm so close. You blocked my moves, but I know it's not. I don't feel bad about it. I just feel bad. I was bested bad. What? Board games are fun.
Amazing 11 years, guys.
Hey,
11 years of the wheel.
would you rather I was an alpha board game player as your boyfriend?
You're not?
As you're doing something. No, that's not the best move. You should do this instead, and then that, and then that. Pangit yung move mo. Because there are people like that.
That's sad. That's very sad.
Well, it's scary that there are people like that. And there are board games that are trying to make their games designed against that.
Really?
Robinson Crusoe, remember? There's a captain this round. So the captain can go, I decide this turn. Other board games like Pandemic, sadly, wala. There's no rule.
Yeah, there's no mechanic that prevents someone from driving the
So
group.
then you have someone going, no, you actually, ito yung move natin dapat. Kasi I played this na eh. First time mo, di ba?
That's sad. Don't be that player.
So yeah. Have fun. Play to your best. If you're playing with new people, make sure they don't miss out on the rules so they don't feel bad when you still win.
He has said it. He has said it aloud. I didn't say it. He said it. He said it.
If you still win. I didn't say when you still win.
Wow, generous. Look at that. Look at that range
Because
of
it's true.
probability.
Okay, again, our difference of win rate is like
It's
barely
still big.
it's barely 2%.
It's still many games.
It's barely 2%
It's still 2%.
of how many plays.
Every percentage counts. Yeah, just look at the scale of the wins you have. Why are you a snake with a lisp?
Because I have scales to look at. This. I guess we should wrap up. You're doing the face. That's the face up. Okay, I had it up. Oh wait, there's more comments. Karen says shade. Amos says when you're too competitive, you help your opponent win.
That's an interesting statement. I always get weirded out by the whole I don't play board games because I'm too competitive. Like what does that mean? What are you really trying to say there?
I think it's either they just don't like how they lose,
Mm-hmm.
or they don't like how they get when they play. Because there are people who are super trash talky and the like, and that's a valid way to enjoy. That's not how I prefer to play, so I don't really involve myself often in that type of game. Because there is the joy of just, I got the move. Diba? But then there's also those times wherein the gameplay is very psychological. Wherein there's a lot of talk back, there's a lot of this and that. So it feels very much like sports.
Our games are very silent. Our games degenerate into silence.
And explosions of emotion that are kept to themselves. And then, Rocky, that was my move. And then move.
Yeah, my favorite response to Toby saying Rocky, that was my move. And then I'll be like, I know.
See? And note, doesn't say that to other players.
Because everybody has to beat Toby.
Ah! Okay.
That's not a secret. That's an episode. Oh, it was like, I was referring to Toby's way of helping the opponent as for him to not take the blame. Well,
well,
No,
no,
I
it's
don't
not.
know.
It's not really a not take the blame thing. It is in many ways a okay. We have had our frustrating. We finally beat the game. We won, only to learn we were playing it wrong,
yeah.
and it's a terrible feeling. We also have there's the first Martians board game, which we still aren't sure if we're playing it right,
That's sad.
and it's
I
frustrating.
was super excited for
because
that.
we really like what it looks like. We really feel.
I'm declaring it now. That's our 2021
Yeah.
project.
But we
Figure
really,
out
we
first
really
Martians.
feel like we're doing it right.
Because we play Robinson Crusoe.
But we still have that feeling na, was that it? Did we really get that right?
Yeah.
And since we have no way of making sure, it's a terrible, terrible feeling.
Because we need to have Ignazi on the phone. You know,
And-
it's like, dude, help us. I'll
and-
give you cookies.
And that's what I don't want any new players to feel when they're playing the game. Because admittedly, some of the games that we really do enjoy and introduce to others can be overwhelming. The Vitala Cerda games, games like this, the Euro games. It's not uncommon for some players na parang turn 2, hindi ko pa rin naintindihan yung ginagawa ko, but I'll do this, gano'n. And, we try to, kasi that you're trying to do this. What do you want to do ba? What are you gonna... We want them to grasp the game.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, it's not, admittedly, for us, in as much as we enjoy winning,
We want a fair win.
and it's not anymore as big a thing as before.
Hmm.
Like, when we win or when we lose, it's a happy moment, but it's not like sobrang...
Yeah, it's
we
like-
lord it over others.
At
Talo ka!
At least in our circles,
Yeah.
we're not. It's really more just like, parang at the end, ooh, and then whoever won,
Mhm.
won. And then we all get to talk about how that happened.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, you scored this many points with this.
Or yung mga, naharang mo ko sa kanina. I was hoping for that. That was 12 points. Ganyan. And it's a nice conversation about that rather than how, it's like sports for others we're in,
Then you
Talo
trash
ka na
talk
naman.
after. Yeah.
3 weeks ka rin talo. Yung mga ganun. But there are groups like that. We've seen that in board game groups.
Yeah.
Diba? And for them, it's sobrang, diba, when they meet again, it's like, oh, rematch! And that's their fun. That's not
Yeah.
their fun.
Our fun is trying to rotate the 600 games in this house and like figure out what we're gonna play. And then still, because we play with other board game friends, they bring their own games.
So we also have to
And
make
then
time
now
for
we have
them.
to rotate those. It's like we're never gonna play this collection.
And there's also the kunyari, okay, we'll play Tzolk'in. So we play it. So in a group of 8, with let's say 3 people here with me, and then you a different game.
Yeah.
And then the next month we bring Tzolk'in again, and then you're like, it's your chance to play it. But then one of the earlier 3, ayan, gusto ko subukan ulit, may ideas ako. So the others can't necessarily mix and match, and that's not a problem.
it's
but it's
a
just
great problem
but it's
to
a-
have.
But it's a funny thing of parang same group na naman or most of the same group and ganyan.
This is why I track who plays what, guys, so that we can talk about it. Like, oh, we did this and this.
But all in all, it's not a negative thing. It's just a difference of play styles, a difference of
Fun.
fun. And in our case, well, at least in my case, I want to be more specific. I really am very about the rules because I don't want to spend 30 minutes to 2 hours playing a game, and then at the end of the game we realize it doesn't count because we were doing it wrong.
It's also because Toby tends to spend about 30 minutes at the beginning of the game explaining the rules. And you have to pay attention.
Because sometimes it's not even mine. I brought this new game. Yay! Let's play it. Toby, tinamo kung kaya mo ituro. Huh? Okay. It's fun. Not a complaint at all, but it's just funny how that
Carlos,
happens.
like, do you really track it? Yeah, if you have the Board Game Geek app that
Mhm.
corresponds to your forum account, then you can track all your plays.
Mhm.
So I have tracked over about 3,600 something plays.
Mhm. That allows you to track who played,
Can't see it.
what their scores were, what game. It's a nice way also to check, like in our case, when we have a noticeably large collection, parang what haven't we played in a while? We can check that. There's even options to filter by player numbers, right?
Yeah, you can try to. Well, number one, you have to encode your entire board game collection
Mhm.
onto Board Game Geek. Then you have the option now to filter through your games and decide, hey, I need a game that supports up to 8 players, and then it
Mm.
will kind of filter. Or I need a game that handles a minimum of 4, and then you can filter that. Or you can get a random game and see.
Mhm.
It's fun. It's not the most advanced app, I will admit.
Mhm.
It's a clunker, but
Yeah.
it works.
And it's really hard to have a universally easy to use tracker because the board games still are developed by different companies.
Mm-mm.
They all have their different computations and scoring mechanisms. So it's hard to have one app that unifiedly allows you to track everything
One
easily.
app to rule them all.
And trust me, I've tried to think of a good way to do it and found myself coming up with something that looked like spreadsheets, which was not UX friendly.
So yeah, board game geek not that bad. Karen's like, oh, she feels like she's the one who forgets rules a lot.
It's
Not that not significantly more than other
yeah,
people.
and
in my
it's not
experience.
uncommon because rules in games are tough to keep in mind. We still refer to rule books every now and then.
Mm-mm.
We just have the advantage of
iteration.
yeah, and since we play often enough, there are times I forget certain rules. Earlier, Rocky was the one who remembered how prophecies work. I couldn't remember. I had to look at the page to see it. So that's fine. We cover for each other no matter when it happens.
But yeah, I've oddly still remembered the different legendaries. That weirds me out.
I realized I don't remember how to play viticulture. So like when we had our board game night, viticulture, and I'm like, oh my god, I don't remember how to play that.
Yeah, I only remembered midway. It's like I was like, what am I doing?
Wingspan. It took me a while to remember how to play it, and I was so surprised I still won that session. What?
It's a bird. Okay, we're not talking about Tzolk'in anymore. We're just talking about board games.
Yeah,
Which is
okay.
not a bad thing, but oh my gosh. I miss everyone, guys. I
Yeah,
miss
we
playing.
miss you all, and I think that's all the time we have for now. We had a lot of fun talking about Tzolk'in and Tzolk'in tribes and prophecies, and I really, really hope this year things start moving forward in the world and we can start organizing again and having fun as a group. Until then, we will have to resort to counting the days.
Mitch is like, I wish you can add graphics in Restream. Technically, you can add stuff, but then there's a lot of paid features. And this stream does not earn money. So we're not there yet.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right. So if you have questions or suggestions for future episodes, fill out the Google form at bit.ly, Baduy Pride Ideas. Thank you to the likes of Mitch and Carlo who regularly submit ideas. We will get to them. Don't worry.
Yes.
Your contributions are super helpful. You can follow us on Twitter, all Toby No Shade, RG Sunico.
You could also check out our blog, baduypride.com, for all the previous episodes and stuff about us.
Feel free to continue the conversation in the comments below. Let us know what you thought about seeing these moving wheels for Tzolk'in. And do you think you'll be able to say Chichen Itza? Uxmal. Yeah, all these city names. And then, of course, be sure to subscribe for notifications, whether on Facebook or YouTube, so you don't miss our next live stream. Once again, I'm Rocky.
And I'm Toby.
And this is Baduy Pride. Have a good week, everyone. January is almost over.